to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to dive into one of the positions that I feel are one of the biggest needs for the New York Giants. And you'll see why I feel that way throughout this video. And that, of course, being the cornerback spot. Now, on one side of the field, James Bradberry, we all know, is one of the better cornerbacks in football. But to run this defense successfully, I think the New York Giants need strong corner play on both sides of the field. Last year, James Bradberry held quarterbacks to a quarterback rating of 80. He was very good. He played at a near all-pro level for the New York Giants. Of course, on the other side, people thought that DeAndre Baker was going to be the second corner coming into his second year, a former first-round pick out of Georgia, who was the first cornerback selected in the entire 2019 NFL draft by the New York Giants. And we all know what happened there. And then the Giants had to, set their sights by making a trade for giving up a seventh-round pick for a former third-round pick in Isaac Yiadom. He got an opportunity, and in addition to that, at the end of the year, the New York Giants tried out Julian Love, and I'll get into some of their numbers and some of my thoughts with them at the position as well in terms of other in-house options for the New York Giants at that second cornerback spot. You have Sam Beal, and I see a lot of New York Giants fans who really don't want to overemphasize trying to fix the cornerback position this offseason, say that, well, maybe you got to give Sam Beal a shot. Well, here's what I'll say about Sam Beal, and I'm not saying he can't be successful, but Sam Beal was a supplemental pick, third-round draft pick, and he's been hurt several times throughout his career already. This year he sat out due to the virus, so he didn't play football last year. So he's got to get accustomed back to playing in the game. And who even knows if he's going to be on this roster next year? When he got an opportunity to play with the New York Giants, he didn't look that good. So I look at the New York Giants roster right now between Yiadom, between Beal potentially, and between Love, who we didn't even draft to be an exterior corner. We drafted him more to be a slot guy and potentially a guy to play the safety position. And I see a major question mark on that side of the football field. And knowing that Patrick Graham and this defense want to be a lot more aggressive than they were last year, in order to do that, you have to have stronger corner play on the other side of the field. And I think that's the future of the NFL. You look at the best defenses in football, they have very strong secondaries. That's the way teams are building their lineups. And even though the New York Giants have spent a lot of draft capital at that position, I don't think it's complete. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we cut DeAndre Baker. We were banking on him to kind of mature this year. And some Giants fans may not want to spend early draft capital at the cornerback spot, which I completely understand. We need a wide receiver, right? We need to get pressure on the quarterback. I just posted on Twitter. Last year, Leonard Williams led the Giants in all major statistical categories when it came to getting after the quarterback. 11.5 sacks, second was 4. I think he had 42 pressures. The second was like 16. It's not even close. We need to get more pressure on the quarterback. But you could definitely argue having stronger corner play, the opposite side of James Bradberry, could lead the New York Giants to getting even more pressure on the quarterback. They actually exceeded some expectations with the amount of sacks they had, being with the limited talent at the edge rusher position, especially after O'Shane Ximines and Lorenzo Carter went down early in the season with injuries. But they got a lot of their pressure from the defensive line. They definitely need to improve that outside linebacker position. But cornerback, we cannot forget about that as well, at least in my opinion. First guy I want to talk about is Julian Love. And like I said, he was a guy out of Notre Dame that we drafted to be a slot guy and a safety. He got to play a little exterior corner against the Dallas Cowboys last year, in which he played well the last game of the season against Andy Dalton, okay, in a game that didn't really matter. But yeah, you were going up against really good wide receivers. They killed us with the tight end. But Love, by all accounts, did a pretty good job. But when you dive into his advanced statistics, and granted, most of this is at the safety position, and granted, he didn't get a ton of snaps this year with the New York Giants. If you go back and look the year before, he got just about the same amount of targets, even though he didn't really play until the last 5 or 6 games of the season. This year, he started in 6 games. He played all 16, but in a limited role. He gave up a 71% completion percentage. 31 targets came his way. He gave up 22 completions. In those completions, he gave up over 16 yards per catch. He had a QB rating against of 128 as opposed to the year before at 81. Do you really feel confident starting a guy at the second cornerback spot who was never drafted to play that position to begin with going into the year? Now, by no means am I saying rule him out in terms of competition going into the year. If he looks great in training camp, maybe you do give him a shot. But do I feel confident with him being the second cornerback going into next season? Absolutely not. Those numbers definitely don't jump off the page. The next potential in-house guy is Isaac Yiadom. Isaac Yiadom, a former third-round pick of the Denver Broncos, who actually played decent for the Giants in certain games. He definitely wasn't a liability every game that he played. He had some strong points throughout the year, and he's a young prospect. He could still grow, mature, and become a better cornerback. He's still only 24 years old. But I don't view him as a good starter at this point in time, especially with the type of defense that the New York Giants want to run. And when you look at his advanced statistics, it's the same story. 60 targets, 37 completions. The completion percentage against isn't horrible, 61.7. However, of the 60 targets, he surrendered 6 touchdowns with a QB rating of 120.6. That is atrocious. That is horrible, especially when you look at some of the corners I'm going to show you that are free agents this year. Now, I'm not sure what the market is going to be for some of these players. I looked at two. I'm going to go over the list of most of the prominent free agents at the corner position, and then I'm going to highlight 3 guys that I could see the New York Giants potentially targeting. But, of course, a lot of that is going to come down to how the New York Giants choose to spend their money and finding out what, the cap space is going to be. You're hearing rumors of 175. You're hearing rumors it could be as high as 195. I've heard some more recent rumors that it may fall somewhere in between in the 180 to 185 range. And we're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. And we're going to have to see how the New York Giants plan some of their cuts. Do they decide to bring back a guy like Leonard Williams? That, of course, will chew up a lot of space. But one route that the Giants could take, similar to last year, is addressing the defense heavily in free agency. Bringing back Leonard Williams, maybe you're bringing a veteran corner. They tried to go this route last year with Ross Cockrell, and it kind of fell through before the season started. I could see the New York Giants taking the wait-and-see approach when you see a lot of the names that may be out there in the free agency market. Of course, not all of them are going to hit free agency, but a lot of these teams are going to be tied for cap space, leaving a lot of guys looking for jobs. But when I went down the list, and I'm not going to highlight every player, some of the veterans that you could be looking at, I'm going to highlight one in particular. We'll get to him in a second. DJ Hayden, who's still solid. He's 31 years old. Richard Sherman, who I think did some of his work in the slot. He's 33 years old. Patrick Peterson being the biggest name, but by all accounts, he's 31, and he started to regress. Last year, he had a quarterback rating of nearly 100, and he'd probably still require a pretty hefty contract because of his name, because he's a former All-Pro, and he hasn't completely fallen off the map. Jason McCourty, 34 years old. That's really old, and he was not very good last year. Of course, he has ties to Joe Judge, but he's not really a guy that's going to get me very excited. And the same can really be said for Josh Norman. He's 34 years old. There are some younger options that I'm going to get into. As far as some of the other guys go, Quentin Dunbar's 28 years old. He played decent last year for Seattle after not playing so well with Washington. Depends on the money for him. Spot Track had him at about $8.1 million. Awuzie is still very young from the Dallas Cowboys. Hasn't been very good since 2018, though. Good chance Dallas lets him go. Would we have interest? Not too sure there. Terrence Marshall, 29 years old, got some playing time last year with the Browns. Actually played pretty well. I'm not going to highlight him. Sidney Jones, a former first-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles, played decent in a limited role last year, but he still had a quarterback rating of over 100. Maybe if he was very cheap at 25 years old, but again, not a guy I'm going to have tremendous confidence in. And Jason Verrett is actually a guy definitely keep your eye on. Not going to highlight him. I got the next 3 coming up, but he's 30. He actually had a really strong year last year for the San Francisco 49ers, and from what I read, it's possible the 49ers will let him hit the open market. He does have an injury history. He has a history of kind of being up and down, but last year he was very strong for the San Francisco 49ers. So there are some names that maybe could work if, value meets need for the New York Giants. But now I kind of want to pull up some of the other names, and one of the most popular guys out there for the New York Giants that I've seen a lot of people talk about, some subscribers in my Discord, some people in my comments, William Jackson. William Jackson of the Cincinnati Bengals. He has not played a full season, I don't think, throughout his entire career. Played 14 games last year, 13 the year before that. He's 4 years into his career. He's still relatively young. He's going to be 29 next year. Spot Track has his market at about 6.3. My guess would be he'd be higher than that, but he is a very impressive potential prospect for the New York Giants to bring in. Last year, the Bengals extended him, I think, on the rookie deal, and we'll see if the New York Giants are able to get their hands on him if he does hit, the open market. But when you really look into his advanced statistics, he could be a really good fit for the Giants. He's also known to be a press cover corner, which would fit our scheme. These are his advanced statistics, and what's really impressive here, you're going to look at the completion percentage against really throughout his entire career over the last 3 years, 57.1%, 58.2%. This past year, 51.4% in 14 starts. He only had 1 interception, but did a great job in that aspect. Only gave up 38 completions on 74 targets while surrendering 4 touchdowns. Quarterback rating at an all-time low of 88.2. So pretty impressive numbers there. And again, it's going to come down to what he would command on the open market, but definitely a guy for the right price if you're looking to fill that need via free agency that I could see the New York Giants having interest in. The next guy I want to talk about is a guy that's relatively young. Not sure if he'll hit the open market, but when I did some research into Michael Davis from the Chargers, he's a very intriguing prospect. And we'll see. Chargers do have cap space, so there's a good chance Davis may not hit the open market. But if he does, I could see him getting a pretty good hefty contract. He's still young. He's 26, and his advanced statistics are pretty solid. In addition to that, he's 6'2", and is known as a pretty solid corner, coming off a solid year last year for the Chargers. This past year, he was targeted 104 times with a completion percentage against of 60.6. Only surrendered 3 touchdowns with a quarterback rating of under 80 at 79.2. That's actually better than James Bradbury last year, and a quarterback rating the year before that of 76. Played all 16 games last year, so definitely a guy maybe to keep an eye on. He's got some height at 6'2" as well if he is available in free agency for the right price. And then one of the veterans that I was interested in was actually a guy that I talked about last year when Minnesota was thinking about moving on from Xavier Rhodes. And, you know, the book on him last year, leaving the Minnesota Vikings, was a guy that was kind of done, looked like he had fallen off a cliff. This year he goes to Indianapolis, and granted, they have some very good pieces there on defense, and that may have helped him. He had a fantastic bounce-back season for the Indianapolis Colts. He's 31 years old, probably wouldn't command a long-term contract, maybe a little bit more affordable than some of the younger guys. He started all 16 games, so showed durability there after a year in which he started 15. The year before, with the Minnesota Vikings, he surrendered a completion percentage of 81.5%. 66 completions on 81 targets. This year, the same amount of targets with 81, yet only gave up 42 completions. 24 less completions for a completion percentage of 51.9%. He had a great bounce-back season, QB rating against of 84.5, while surrendering 5 touchdowns on 81 targets. So Xavier Rhodes, could be an interesting name if the Colts do let him go. They only had him on a one-year deal this year. But I just wanted to go over some of the names that I think the New York Giants could potentially be interested in if they go via the free agency route. Regardless, whether they go free agency or the draft, in my opinion, right now it is one of the biggest needs for this football team, and it needs to be addressed as soon as possible. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.